I want you to imagine something. You're on your honeymoon. A beautiful villa over the ocean. The woman you just married is sleeping right next to you. And her phone buzzes. You don't check it. Because you trust her. That trust is about to cost you everything. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm a software engineer. I wake up early. I make my bed. I saved money for 2 whole years just to give my wife the best honeymoon of her life. And I almost missed the one detail that changed everything. Stay with me. Because what I found, what I did, and what happened next, I've never told the whole story. Until today. Vanessa and I got married on a Saturday in June. 180 people came. White flowers everywhere. A live band played until midnight. I danced with my wife and honestly thought, I am the luckiest man alive. 1 week later, we were in the Maldives. The water was so clear you could see the fish from the dock. When Vanessa saw our villa, she grabbed my hand and just stood there quietly for a moment. Not screaming. Not jumping. Just standing there, squeezing my hand, taking it all in. She looked over at me and smiled. I can't believe this is our life, she said. Neither could I. The first 2 days were perfect. Mornings with coffee on the deck. Long swims before lunch. Sunsets that looked fake, like someone painted them. On the second morning she traced small circles on my arm and said softly, "Promise me we'll come back here in 10 years. I promised. I meant it. But that's the thing about a perfect lie, while you're living inside it, it feels exactly like the truth. Then came night 2. I was reading in bed. Vanessa was in the shower. Her phone lit up on the table beside me. Once. Twice. 3 times. I'm not the type to snoop. So I just turned it face down and kept reading. That one small choice almost changed everything. Because what was on that phone wasn't just a secret. It was a plan. And I was the only person in that villa who didn't know about it. Day 3. I wake up. The bed next to me is empty. I make coffee and walk out to the deck. And I see her. Down at the beach bar, the one that doesn't even open until 9 a.m., there's Vanessa. And there's a man standing very close to her. Tall. Blonde. White shirt. Leaning over her, smiling. Then he reaches out and pushes a strand of hair away from her face. My coffee gets cold in my hand. I stand there. Still. And I try to tell myself every calm thing I can think of. Resort staff. Old friend. Just talking. But I already knew. I thought about the circles she traced on my arm that morning. The 10-year promise. Her hand squeezing mine at the dock. And I felt something hollow open up in my chest. 20 minutes later she walked back into the villa, relaxed and smiling, and told me she had been watching the sunrise alone on the beach. She looked me right in the eyes when she said it. It wasn't the lie that scared me. It was how easy it was for her. No pause. No flicker. Just a calm, natural smile, the same smile I had been loving for years. I had known this woman deeply. Her coffee order, her fears, the way she talked in her sleep. I thought I knew everything. She didn't cheat on our honeymoon. She cheated before it even began. That night Vanessa said she was tired. Kissed my cheek and fell asleep in 10 minutes. I lay there staring at the fan on the ceiling. Listening to it turn. Thinking about the men on the beach. Thinking about her hand on his arm. Thinking about 10 years from now. At midnight her phone buzzed. She didn't move. I picked it up. And I want to be honest, my hands were not steady. I was not some calm, unfeeling machine in that moment. My chest was tight. I almost put it back down. I didn't. The name on the screen said, Kai, work contact. I opened the messages. His last text, sent just 12 minutes ago. Your husband's asleep. Come meet me at the bar. I've missed you. I scrolled up. I can't believe you actually married him. Does he make you feel the way I do? And then her reply, sent 2 hours earlier, while I was sitting right there in the same room. No. But it's complicated. I'll come when he's asleep. I put the phone down. I lay back. I stared at the ceiling for a long time. There was a moment, one moment, where I almost woke her up. Almost. My hand actually moved toward her shoulder. Then I pulled it back. And I made a decision. Not to explode. Not tonight. To think first. Trust doesn't die loudly. It disappears in silence. And that night, in that dark villa above the water, mine was gone. I spent the rest of the night putting the pieces together. Kai was a bartender. He and Vanessa had met at a work event months ago. They had been seeing each other for about 5 months. She ended it when I proposed. But then, 2 weeks before our wedding, her job sent her to a conference. At his resort. She came home looking happy. She kissed me like nothing had happened. We got married 6 days later. She told herself she could let it go after the wedding. That feelings just fade if you decide they should. But that's not how it works. You don't bury things. They just wait. The next morning I acted completely normal. Vanessa didn't notice anything different. I suggested we go scuba diving together. She hates scuba. I knew she'd say no. She smiled and said she'd relax by the pool. I kissed her on the forehead and said I'd be back by 4. I wasn't going diving. I went to the hotel's business center. I made 3 calls. First, my cousin Priya. She's a family lawyer in Houston. I told her everything. She walked me through exactly what to save and document. She had paperwork started before we even hung up. Second, Marcus, my best man. One job, find out everything about a bartender named Kai at this resort. Quietly. Quickly. Third, the hotel manager. I needed to extend my stay by 2 nights alone, and I needed it kept private. He helped without a single question. By 4 p.m., I was back at the villa. I poured 2 glasses of water. Sat across from Vanessa at the table on the deck. The ocean was right there below us, the same ocean we had been swimming in together 2 days before. A bird flew past. The AC hummed inside. I looked at her and said, very quietly, I know about Kai. The glass in her hand tilted slightly. She didn't speak. She blinked once, slowly. Then again. The AC kept humming. Her fork touched the plate with a small sound and didn't move again. First she said it wasn't true. Then she said it was nothing, just talking. Then she cried. I slid her phone across the table with the messages open. And I waited. The crying stopped. Everything came out. All of it. 5 months. Not just texts, a real relationship. The conference 2 weeks before our wedding. The way she had told herself that once we were married, it would just go away on its own. I love you, she said, tears on her face. I really do, Daniel. That's what makes this so hard. I looked at her for a long moment. I thought about her hand in mine at the dock. The circles on my arm. 10 years from now. I believe you, I said. I think you really do love me. But that's not enough. Not even close. She opened her mouth to say something else. Here's what's going to happen, I said. She would take the first flight home. Leaving at 6 a.m. I had already checked. I had already called Priya. The process to end the marriage had already started. I would stay the remaining 4 nights. She was quiet for a long time. You're not going to yell at me, she whispered. No, I said. You don't deserve the energy. She left before sunrise. I stood on the deck in the dark and watched the small boat take her across the water. The engine was a low hum in the distance. She never looked back. Marcus had done his job. 2 years before, Kai had been let go from a resort in the Caribbean. There was an official written complaint about him. He had been crossing lines with guests repeatedly. When he applied for this job, he hid it completely. Marcus found someone from that time willing to write it all down. I'll be honest, I sat with the letter for a full day before I sent it. I asked myself if I was doing this out of anger. Whether this was revenge dressed up as justice. But here's what I kept coming back to: Kai had done this before. He had a pattern. He had lied to get this job. I wasn't destroying him. I was just making sure the right people knew the truth about who he actually was. I sent the letter. Facts only. No angry words. 1 week after I got home, Kai lost his job. The first night alone in that villa was the hardest night I can remember. I sat alone at the restaurant over the water and watched other couples. Laughing. Touching hands across the table. Completely unaware of me. I thought about her tracing circles on my arm. I ordered something I barely tasted. I went back to the room and lay on the big empty bed and looked at the ceiling for a long time. But I stayed. I didn't fly home early. I didn't call anyone. Night 2 was quieter. Night 3, something shifted. I ordered the best thing on the menu. Poured a glass of wine. Sat on the edge of the deck with my feet hanging over the water and watched the sun go down. It was the same sunset she and I had watched 2 nights before, sitting close together, her head on my shoulder. This time I was alone. And for the first time since I found those messages, I just breathed. No act. No one to hold it together for. Just me. I came home. Changed the lease to my name. Moved the furniture. Bought a good coffee machine. Small things. But mine. 6 months of therapy, best decision I ever made. Promotion at work. Hikes on weekends. Cold water swimming, because sometimes when your heart is broken the only thing that cuts through the noise is something sharp and physical. Marcus set me up on a date last month. Her name is Claire. She laughed at something I said at dinner and I thought, okay. Maybe. Then one evening Vanessa called. Her voice was quiet. Different. She said Kai was struggling badly. No job, no money, no way forward. She didn't ask directly at first. She talked around it for a few minutes. Then she asked if I could help him. I let her finish. Then I said, I know everything, Vanessa. I knew before I ever said his name at that table. The letter was mine. Silence. She never called again. Kai never recovered professionally. Vanessa stayed with him anyway, 2 people clinging to something that had already cost everyone too much. I watched it all from a distance and waited to feel something like satisfaction. It didn't come. What came instead was quieter and harder to name. Like I had won every single move in a game I never actually wanted to play. Like somewhere inside all the patience and the planning and the careful execution, I had quietly lost a part of myself I wasn't sure I could get back. I don't regret what I did. But I don't celebrate it either. The honeymoon I planned was perfect. It just wasn't for the marriage I thought I was in. And those 4 nights alone, no pretending, no performing, just the ocean and the sky and me. Those were the most honest days of the whole trip. Some endings don't feel like victory. They just feel like finally, being done. Leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done differently. I read every single one.